vaccine on its way.
We are now moving towards really what could be the most incredible thing for the province.
The first doses of the COVID-19 vaccine set to be administered in Ontario next week. Who will get priority and where the injections will be given. Plus,
people are not staying home. They're more mobile, more active, going out and around.
a warning from health officials as they give updated projections on where we're headed on another record day of COVID cases in Ontario. And the city marks the beginning of Hanukkah, how the Jewish community is finding new ways to celebrate this year. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. We begin with breaking news from North York tonight, where crews continue to battle a 5-alarm fire at a 14-story high-rise building. Now, this is the scene near Bathurst and Steeles. We're told the fire started in an apartment on the 5th floor. Over 50 firefighters are trying to get the fire under control and ventilate the smoke. 2 people have been taken to hospital with serious injuries, along with 2 firefighters that were overcome by smoke. The acting fire chief is on the scene. He described the efforts to save one of the victims from the burning building.
I know they removed the one victim. They were working on her on the balcony, doing CPR and first aid. But because of the fire condition and heavy smoke conditions, they actually had to bring her down a ladder, to get her to Toronto Paramedic Services.
That victim, an elderly woman, is said to be in life-threatening condition. Residents on the floor where the fire started have been evacuated, but all other residents are sheltering in place. And we don't know the cause of the fire at this time. Crews are expected to be there through the night. We'll bring you any updates on the situation. Ontario will begin administering doses of the COVID-19 vaccine next week, Tuesday, December 15th to be exact. Our Angelina King has more on where the injections will be given and who will be getting them.
The day after Health Canada approved the Pfizer vaccine, Ontario announces 6,000 doses will be here on Monday, and so begins the vaccination program.
One of the most incredible ways and means to help us get back to normal, to help us defeat the pandemic, to help us win the war against COVID-19.
The first doses will be split between Toronto General Hospital and the Ottawa Hospital. The first in line, long-term care home workers.
It's a very limited supply, and we want to ensure that the people who need it the most have it as quickly as possible.
The priority is staff who work in homes within the hardest hit regions and
those staff inside of long-term care homes that have already had COVID-19 visited upon them in such a tragic manner, and those staff in the homes that have communal living, where people heat together in the kitchen and where there's more than one resident in a room.
The province is expecting another 90,000 doses later this month for the most at-risk healthcare workers. They'll be available at 13 hospitals across the province by appointment. Because the Pfizer vaccine can't be moved around after it's delivered, long-term care residents are not included. But the province is expecting to get between 35 to 85,000 doses of the Moderna vaccine if it's approved, and that can be brought into homes to vaccinate residents.
It's what we have been waiting for and what we've needed, and to release those older adults, our family and friends and relatives who have really been held captive in those places for the last 9 months.
There are questions why Ottawa was chosen as a first location, since it's not a lockdown zone and has been faring better than other regions. 1, it had issues in long-term care homes, and 2,
what the rationale was that it was good to test the logistics chain outside of just Toronto itself, and so fly something into Pearson and have to distribute it, and then have to distribute it as far afield as Ottawa.
And a reminder from General Hillier, he says this is going to be a long process. There will be some bumps in the road, and he's asking people to be patient, but says eventually if you are eligible for the vaccine and you would like to get one, you will be able to. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
And the province is reporting another single-day record of COVID cases today with 1,983 new infections. This as health officials release new projections on where we're headed. And as Lorena Redicott reports, they say one thing is clear. The latest lockdown isn't keeping as many people at home as they hoped.
It's clear people aren't staying home as much as in the first wave, and data by the province today backs that up, tracking cell phone mobility. That lockdown also looked much different. Empty streets, schools closed, along with more businesses.
People are not staying home. They're more mobile, more active, going out and around.
Ontario's top doctor made this recommendation for the holidays.
I know there's that Christmas song, "There's no place like home" for the holidays. We mean home and stay home and in your household.
One doctor says the government needs to do more than make suggestions.
I think the government needs to make it easier for people to make the right decisions. The lockdown we have right now is completely different from the lockdown we had in Wave 1. And right now in Toronto, I can cross Steeles Avenue and go shopping or get a haircut or go to the gym. That doesn't make any sense. We need to lock down the Greater Toronto area.
The modeling presented today showed 4 different scenarios for Ontario a month from now. Remain where we are at under 2,000 cases a day, hit up to 2,500 cases a day with 1% growth, 5,000 cases with 3% growth, or much worse with 5% growth, close to 10,000 cases a day. The co-chair of Ontario's Science Advisory Table also added one other possibility.
If we see the type of explosive growth in infections that we saw at during the beginning of the first wave, at say about 9% growth, we'll see 15,000 cases.
We're in a very precarious stage here, and we have to really watch this carefully if we are not going to have to close some things further.
For Toronto, the cases with no clear link are much higher than in any other health region, 70%, suggesting tracking still can't keep up. The modeling shows that under all scenarios, ICU use will remain above 200 for COVID-19 patients for the next month. Today, hospitalization numbers all hit record highs for this second wave. There are now 829 people in hospital, 228 in intensive care, 132 on a ventilator. One doctor says many nurses are already off sick or unable to work because they're contacts with a positive case.
As cases rise, the healthcare workforce becomes more stressed and more strained, and there aren't enough people to actually take care of patients, irrespective of the number of beds that we have. And that's the direction that we're heading.
Today, some of the largest healthcare organizations in the province repeated their plea to the government to issue more restrictions and called on people to enjoy the holidays at a distance from others. Loretta Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
A surge in COVID-19 cases is shutting schools in Windsor.
I think it's probably necessary. Like, if you've seen the cases over the last few weeks.
Elementary and secondary schools in Windsor and surrounding Essex County will close Monday. Officials say it's due to a rapid rise in cases. Students will transition to online learning. The order will be in place until December 18th when students go on holiday break. The region reported more than 100 new cases for the second day in a row today. Hudsons Bay is taking legal action to get their stores open in Toronto and Peel. Both regions, of course, are currently under a lockdown. As Ali Chiasson reports, the company is arguing the restrictions are unfair and jeopardizes the livelihoods of retail workers and businesses.
In a judicial review filed today, the Hudsons Bay Company calls the Ford government's move to close non-essential businesses unreasonable and unfair. They're asking the courts to review the province's decision in both Toronto and Peel region. The regulations are incoherent and devoid of logic and consistency, HBC wrote in its court filing. And although designed to maintain access to essential goods, quote, the regulations do not do that. They argue the province's own health data shows that shoppers don't contribute to the spread of COVID in any significant way. The pandemic is just another blow across the retail sector that was struggling before COVID. Last December, for example, the Bay posted a $226 million quarterly loss. People are shopping online more. Malls where they pay huge rent are struggling to reinvent themselves. They're also not the only ones critical of the government's non-essential store lockdown. Last week, a coalition of about 50 retailers, including Canadian Tire, IKEA, Indigo, Sephora, to name a few, sent an open letter to the Premier. To which Ford responded,
as much as I'd love to say, yes, people have this misunderstanding. I can just go out there and change everything. But man, I can't do that. I have to follow the advice of the chief medical officer.
His government isn't responding to the Hudsons Bay Company's filing today, as it's now officially a matter before the courts. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
The family of Regis Korchinsky Paquette has filed a complaint with a provincial police review board. The 27-year-old died in May after falling from the balcony of her High Park apartment while officers were inside her home. Her family had called police that night after she threatened them with a knife. In August, the SIU cleared 5 officers of any wrongdoing, saying they attempted to de-escalate the situation. It found Korchinsky Paquette tried to climb over a neighbor's balcony when she lost her footing and fell to her death. Her family disagreed with that ruling and said they would pursue other legal avenues. Today, they did just that, filing a complaint with the Office of the Independent Police Review Director. The family wants them to look into the case and the SIU's response, specifically allegations of police misconduct. The complaint says no one in the family who was at the apartment that night saw any officers trying to de-escalate the situation or act on mental health training. Now, we spoke exclusively with the family today.
Really hard. We don't really understand what happened that day in the apartment, and we were told to stand outside, and that's what we did. And all we know was our daughter went in one door and didn't come out the same door. They're just hiding the way that things went down. Like they know they were wrong what they did, and they just literally covered it up. Kill somebody's child.
We will have a full story on the complaint and more from Korchinsky Paquette's family tomorrow.
Not here in Canada.
Hundreds of dump truck drivers converged on Queen's Park today to show their frustration over changes they're required to make to their vehicles in order to comply with provincial safety regulations.
These guys aren't large fleet owners. They're not large corporations. These guys are small business owners, and putting a $20,000, $30,000 cost on them to change the axle during COVID-19 makes what is already a difficult year even more difficult.
We don't have that kind of money to spend on our old trucks. It's going to cost us around $30,000 to do what they wanted.
The truck drivers have to retrofit their axles in order to comply with these regulations. As you heard, the change will cost them tens of thousands of dollars, so they're asking for more time. But Ontario's Ministry of Transportation says they've given operators nearly a decade to comply. Those who fail to do so will still be allowed to operate, but with a reduced load.
And at the end of the day, the engineers tell us this is the safest thing to do. A decade's worth of notice has been given to the industry. There are many, many companies in this province who are in full compliance and have been for over 10 years.
The drivers say they've been unsuccessful in trying to meet with the ministry officials for the past year. The changes need to be made by the end of the year.
So we have to work a little extra hard to still, be festive and jolly and merry, but it's doable for sure.
After the break, a festival of lights like no other. We'll have more on how people in the Jewish community are getting creative to celebrate Hanukkah this year.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
It was a beautiful sight to see our skies lit up with pink, orange, red, and even purple hues tonight as the sun set just before 5. Everyone posting their view of the magical scene on social media. Let's go to our meteorologist Colette Kennedy now. The sunset, of course, just stunning this evening, and temperatures milder than usual for this time of year. But Colette, I know we do have some active weather on its way.
Thanks, Kelda. You know, I have so much to go through tonight because we have some areas where the roads may be the conditions a little bit off tonight into tomorrow morning, but then the actual event with active weather is coming for the weekend. So I want to break things down for you. First of all, where we're seeing some fog that's been developing in some areas becoming dense, and we'll be seeing it even outside of our advisory, but I'll show you where the areas are in that advisory. Mild temperatures prevail another few days, in fact, into the weekend. Sunday, it'll be warm early, and then those temperatures will begin to fall off. And I have a special weather statement to share with you as well, and that's because with this system coming in, although the tracking looks like it's primarily a rain event for the GTA and for the Golden Horseshoe, there are areas where it looks like some ice pelts, freezing rain, and then even some snow accumulating more towards central portions of Ontario. But for tonight, it's the fog advisory. Some areas where it's reduced the visibility down to 0, and because that fog a little stubborn towards tomorrow morning, even the morning commute could be impacted. So I'd like you to allow a little extra time, not just in the advisory areas, but as I say, we're seeing some patchy fog developing outside of that, and a risk of even a bit of black ice developing with some of that moisture near the ground. For now this is jumping ahead to Friday night into Sunday with the system, the Texas low that's going to be moving in. For now, special weather statement through these areas, but we could see as the event gets closer, this upgraded for some snowfall warnings, freezing rain warnings, that kind of thing. And so we'll keep you up to date with that as it gets closer and Environment Canada issues those if it feels necessary. Our highs, well, from today, 6 degrees. How about that? 7 degrees for you there in Hamilton, a little milder. Those clouds were stubborn. Yeah, sure, we get some of the clearing overnight, but not the low-level cloud, that low-level stratus and that fog development. More clearing is happening back towards southwestern Ontario, and then we fill in as the system is approaching Friday and looking ahead to the weekend. You can see that area, that line where more probably just around Peterborough or just north of, over towards Bancroft, some freezing rain and ice pellets in here, and heavier rain event, especially towards Saturday afternoon and into the evening. We'll see that steadier rain into the city. The dense fog patches that risk into southwestern Ontario as well. Tomorrow, a little bit of sun mixing in there for Windsor, for Leamington. Otherwise, we've got quite a bit of cloud covers that system is approaching. And this is a look at the temperatures tonight. What we're looking for is about 2 degrees in St. Catharines, but much closer to freezing Markham, Newmarket, and through those regions towards Aurora as well. Tomorrow afternoon, as long as those winds don't change direction too early, then we're going to see those temperatures spiking. 7 to St. Catharines, 9 degrees. Into the weekend, still mild with the overnight, but then Sunday the temperature will be falling off after some of that rain on the backside. We'll probably see, Kelda, a bit of a light mix even, or the potentials there, and certainly north of the GTA we'll be seeing a messier event with this.
All right, thanks so much, Colette. Well, tonight marks the beginning of Hanukkah. A menorah was lit to mark the festival, there it is, of lights at City Hall. For many in the Jewish community, the next 8 nights will look very different than what they're used to for this time of year, as the pandemic forces them to find new ways to celebrate. Our Greg Ross has more.
Things look dark. It's our responsibility to add light into the world.
Which is fitting, considering Hanukkah is the festival of lights. And one way that Rabbi Chaim Hildesheim of the Chabad Russian Center is adding light is with this giant menorah on the back of a pickup truck.
We're actually having a drive-in, which was by reservation only, where everyone's gonna have to stay in the car.
And from their cars, they can watch the lighting of the menorah.
That's staying up there for 8 days.
He also has another menorah on top of his own car, and every day he will add a light bulb and drive it around the community to show it off.
Spreads the light, brings light to others, joy to others.
Other Jewish communities around the GTA are also finding alternative ways to safely celebrate the holiday.
Regardless of the challenges that are going on in the world today, we wanted to ensure that everyone could experience Hanukkah the way it was meant to be.
Which is why Rabbi Meir Dabrowski and his wife, who are with the Yorkville Jewish Center, have created Hanukkah in a Box.
So in here you have some latkes, which is potato pancakes, a traditional Hanukkah eat. You got some donuts with jelly, menorah that's to be lit with the candles, as well as some dreidels, which is a festive Hanukkah game.
They're delivering them free of charge to anyone who asks for one. And they've also set up a massive Zoom call for the official lighting of the menorah.
Anybody who's alone, going to be lighting the menorah alone tonight, they should not feel alone. They're a part of a greater community, and they can join us in the menorah lighting at 7 o'clock.
That was great news for Julian Brass, who won't get to see many of his family members in person this year, including his parents. But he says they will all be on the call tonight.
To not be with family during Hanukkah is very, very different. It's a completely separate experience from how we're used to it. So we have to work a little extra hard to still, be festive and jolly.
Both of the rabbis say they are encouraging their congregations to stay at home and only celebrate with immediate family. In fact, Rabbi Hildesheim says they have a list of 13 ways to celebrate Hanukkah during COVID posted on their website, with one very important tip.
Since COVID started, I'm telling everyone in the community, for every hand we don't shake must be a phone call that we place. We must call people.
He says they should look for people who are going to be celebrating alone and make time to call and wish them a happy Hanukkah. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
It's been a year like no other, and some people have chosen to document the ways life has changed during the pandemic.
I think it's important so we can learn from it. I think sometimes people need something to reflect on. A picture is worth 1,000 words. The photos will speak for themselves.
I'm Talia Ricci, and coming up, we'll show you around a new outdoor exhibit along the harborfront called Portraits in COVID Times.
When a local photographer lost all of his gigs at the beginning of the pandemic, he turned to street photography, documenting life during these unusual times. Then he put a call out to people across Canada for their images. And some of those photos are now on display around the harbourfront as an outdoor exhibit. Talia Ricci gives us a look.
From like transportation, from flights to like pride, from sports games, like everything became a normal. It was just very surreal. And we wanted to document this, like a woman like hugging her mother in plastic. Like that's just not normal.
What inspired you to put on this exhibit?
For me, it was important for the archive. I'm a third-generation photographer, so I love vintage photography. I started looking at photos of the Spanish flu, and that really encouraged me to really see COVID in a different way. I started taking photos, and that led me to like asking people across Canada to submit their photos to this project, Canada COVID Portrait. We got over 5,000 photographs, and from there we started editing down, and then Harbourfront came in, and they displayed this amazing exhibit. We have 2 shows going on at the waterfront down the street and here, and so if you have nothing to do, you can come down, you can see it from the streetcar or your bike, or just walk down and come see all the massive photos.
I have a photograph in the Canada COVID Portrait exhibit, and it's of my mother and I spending the last Mother's Day together at the hospital. For me to be able to say, this is my mom, felt pretty good. And the day that I went down to see the photograph for the first time, it felt like I was going to visit my mom.
We needed to make sure it was no gathering and safe distancing, and so the idea was that there are different things going on at different times. The water is a good place to be out and be distanced, and we just wanted to make sure there was more to see this winter when you did come down.
Why do you think it's important that we document what's happening throughout the pandemic?
I think it's important so we can learn from it. I think sometimes people need something to reflect on. A picture is worth 1,000 words. The photos will speak for themselves. People come down and I feel they can relate to it. I want to show what other people are going through.
Over the course of the next couple of months, there will be a few other exhibits joining this one around the waterfront, and they'll all be sticking around until February 7th. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Dwight Drummond has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6, and I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night.